Disrespect rarely storms in with noise. It creeps in softly, disguised as a chuckle, a mocking tone, a passing comment meant to sting but not be confronted. The first time you let it go, you've already surrendered ground. Most people shrug it off. They convince themselves it's trivial, hoping the issue will fade. Yet history and experience show us the opposite. Machiavelli grasped a lesson the fragile never grasp. Respect is never passively received, it's actively upheld. When someone takes a jab at you, they're not merely poking at your pride, they're probing your defenses. They're studying your boundaries, assessing whether you're someone who must be handled with care or someone who can be stepped on. Each time you fail to respond, you silently declare yourself harmless. I've spent years studying power structures, human behavior, and the subtle mechanics of influence. And here's what I've found. People who become doormats aren't inherently weak. They're simply blind to the rules of the invisible game unfolding around them. They confuse kindness with tolerance of abuse. They mistake turning the other cheek for moral elevation when, in reality, it's a signal of availability for exploitation. In a competitive world where people are vying for status, recognition, and leverage, unguarded generosity often functions as a neon sign reading "soft target." It draws the hungry, the entitled, and the predatory straight to you. What I'm about to teach you is not about yelling, losing control, or exploding in rage. It's not about childish outbursts. This is about mastering psychological dominance, calm, deliberate, and unsettling. It's about transforming yourself into a person whose boundaries are so solid and whose energy so composed that others instinctively hesitate before stepping wrong. I'm going to give you 5 high-impact mental strategies that will change the way you handle disrespect forever. These are not pleasant-sounding slogans meant to decorate Instagram posts. These are field-tested tactics that work under pressure in real life. By the end of this, you'll see why silence can be sharper than any insult, why repetition forges authority, and why the most quietly imposing individuals are those who need nothing from others. You'll learn to treat disrespect as a coded signal about someone's true intentions, intelligence you can weaponize. You'll also see how to establish an aura that draws respect without a single demand. This isn't about turning yourself into a tyrant. It's about becoming a presence that simply cannot be dismissed. But first, ask yourself, how many times have you replayed an interaction in your head, thinking of the perfect comeback you never delivered? How often have you walked away from a conversation with your jaw tight, burning with resentment because you didn't know how to respond in the moment? That stops now. Today, you learn a skill set most people never even realize exists: the hidden mechanics of disrespect. Most people completely misread how disrespect appears. They expect it to arrive like a punch, obvious, unmistakable, and direct. But skilled manipulators don't behave that way. They understand the social penalties of overt disrespect. So instead, they strike quietly. Real disrespect is a predator in camouflage. It approaches as just a joke, harmless teasing, or innocent mistakes. Think about your own life. It's the coworker who always cuts you off mid-sentence, the friend whose jokes always hit where it hurts, the relative who waves away your opinions with a smirk. It begins subtly, a light tease about your habits, your appearance, your decisions. They're not trying to entertain themselves, they're studying your reaction. If you giggle along or wave it off, you've given them crucial data. You're low risk to challenge. Next, the teasing grows sharper. The interruptions become more frequent. You're slowly excluded from key conversations. Each insult, each interruption, each exclusion is small enough to make confrontation feel awkward. But collectively, it builds a culture of normalized disrespect. If you tolerate this pattern under the illusion of being the bigger person, you're doing something dangerous. You're training others to treat you as disposable. You're signaling that you're a safe target for venting frustrations without consequence. I've watched this pattern dissolve careers, erode friendships, and corrode self-worth. Well-meaning individuals who believed their patience would earn loyalty found themselves surrounded by opportunists who saw that patience as permission. Machiavelli knew this reality intimately. In his world, showing weakness wasn't just humiliating, it was deadly. He recognized that people are always probing one another, quietly searching for soft spots to exploit. His writings on power are not theoretical musings. They're blueprints for surviving environments where perception is everything. And here's one of the hardest truths he would give you: silence at the wrong moment is endorsement. When you say nothing in response to a slight, you're not being mature, you're granting approval. When you chuckle at someone's joke at your expense, you're not being easygoing, you're issuing a license for further disrespect. This is why some people walk through life like kings and queens, while others are forever undervalued. It's not luck, it's not beauty, it's not charm. It's an understanding of how micro-interactions build a hierarchy over time. Every conversation, every gesture, every subtle cue is a negotiation. Respect is negotiated, not gifted. Those who command it understand they're playing chess. Those who lose it are playing checkers. The checkers players react emotionally to each move. The chess players see 5 moves ahead, setting patterns that serve their future interests. Today, I'm teaching you chess. Let's start with the first tool: silence used as a weapon, not as surrender. Most people misunderstand silence. Weak silence is born of confusion, fear, or pain. It's the silence of someone who doesn't know how to respond or who's afraid of escalation. This silence emboldens aggressors. They sense your discomfort and push further. Strategic silence, however, is different. It's a choice. It's the calm of someone who is evaluating, not retreating. It's a pause that flips the psychological script. Here's how it plays out. Someone drops a disrespectful comment. Instead of defending yourself, explaining, or firing back, you stop. You go still. You hold their gaze. You let the air thicken with quiet. That pause does something powerful inside their brain. First, their words hang there unsupported. Second, they start to question whether they went too far. Third, they begin to fill that silence with their own discomfort, guilt, or nervous chatter. People dread empty space. They scramble to fill it. When you can sit in it comfortably, you gain leverage over those who cannot. Machiavelli famously wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved when the two cannot coexist. Strategic silence creates a subtle fear, not of violence, but of unpredictability. They can't read you. They don't know how you'll respond. And unpredictable people are dangerous because their limits aren't obvious. Picture this in real life. You're in a group. Someone cracks a joke at your expense. Everyone laughs. The expected script is that you'll either laugh along or fire back. Instead, you do nothing. You just look at the joke teller with calm neutrality. The laughter falters. The silence grows heavy. The joke teller realizes they've miscalculated. They may stammer, explain, or even apologize. Without uttering a word, you've flipped the power dynamic. The beauty of this approach is its control. You're not reactive. You're not emotional. You're present, and that presence unnerves them because it mirrors their behavior back without giving them any foothold. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not absence. It's control. It's the coiled pause before action. In a world addicted to constant noise, the one who can pause is the one who holds the room. But silence only works when it's grounded in strength. You're not quiet because you're broken. You're quiet because you're deciding whether the person in front of you even deserves a response. Practice this in small doses. When someone makes a thoughtless remark, pause, look at them, let them feel the gravity of their own words. You'll be shocked how quickly people recalibrate their behavior. Now the second pillar, consistency without compromise. This is where most people lose power. They establish a boundary once, then expect permanent compliance. But boundaries are not signs, they're walls that must be maintained. If the wall cracks even once, people will push at that weak spot again and again. Human beings, like water, flow toward the easiest path. If your standards have leaks, they'll find them. If your rules bend occasionally, they'll test for those exceptions constantly. Consistency is everything, not just in dramatic moments, but in the small, daily ones. Every single time someone disrespects you, your response must be calm, predictable, and unyielding. Think of the people you know who command respect automatically. They're consistent. They handle poor treatment the same way every time. No exceptions. No mood swings. Their boundaries are not subject to negotiation. Now think of those who get walked over. They're inconsistent. They let small offenses slide to avoid tension. They make allowances for special cases. They're vigilant some days and passive on others. This inconsistency trains others to keep pressing, hoping today will be the day you fold. Machiavelli understood that power is built on repetition. Every time you enforce your standards, your reputation hardens. Every time you make an exception, your credibility softens. When you become relentless about consistency, people start predicting your reactions. They know disrespect triggers a certain response. This predictability breeds caution, and caution is the root of respect. Practical example: someone interrupts you in a meeting. Every time it happens, you stop. You look at them, you wait until they're done, then you resume. Not sometimes, every time. Someone makes a personal joke at your expense. You don't laugh, you don't smile. You keep your expression neutral and carry on as if they didn't speak. Not sometimes, every time. No exceptions. Over time, this pattern sends a crystal clear message. This person does not tolerate disrespect. People who try to dump their emotional burdens on you when you're clearly occupied are testing the edges of your self-respect. Every time it happens, your answer must be steady and exact. I understand you're upset, but I can't handle this right now. Not sometimes yes, sometimes no. Not occasional sympathy out of guilt. Absolute consistency. Niccolo Machiavelli warned centuries ago that men are so simple and so eager to satisfy immediate needs that a deceiver will never run short of victims. The immediate need in your life is avoiding your consistent consequences, but the moment someone learns your boundaries are firm, they start monitoring their own conduct instead of testing yours. They realize you're not a person who makes rare exceptions. You're a person who lives by rules. Here's where most people falter. They think boundaries only matter for blatant offenses, screaming, insults, direct betrayal. But your standards have to reach down to the smallest signals as well. The eye roll when you're speaking, the dismissive sigh that slips out when you're explaining yourself, the subtle lean-back body language that says, "You're beneath me." Every single one of these micro-behaviors needs to be handled with the same measured, unflinching response. This may sound harsh to people accustomed to letting things go, but it's actually far kinder than the alternative. Why? Because when people know precisely where they stand with you, they stop guessing and start adjusting. They're not left to wonder whether today you'll tolerate disrespect or tomorrow you'll explode. They know your standard never changes, so they stop trying to cross it. Inconsistent people, by contrast, generate the most confusion and chaos. Sometimes they're soft targets, sometimes they snap, sometimes they're warm, sometimes they're cold. This unpredictability makes everyone walk on eggshells, trying to decode who they'll get today. But when you're consistently firm, something unexpected happens. People relax. They respect you more because they know what's acceptable and what's off limits. That clarity reduces drama and builds trust. It may look tough on the surface, but it's the most merciful way to treat both yourself and others. Right now, affirm this to yourself: my standards never bend. Pick one single disrespectful behavior you've been tolerating: constant interruptions, being kept waiting, subtle digs. From today forward, respond to that behavior the exact same way every single time it appears. Watch how fast the energy shifts when others realize your limits aren't up for negotiation. Now, let's push deeper. This next piece separates people who merely hold boundaries from those who command powerful respect. When someone crosses you, your reply cannot be a neat, proportionate mirror of their action. It must be memorable. It must be slightly heavier than their offense. Because a normal response vanishes from memory. One insult answered with another is just noise. An argument answered with another argument is just another forgettable fight. But a calm, calculated, disproportionate response leaves a lasting echo. If someone mocks you in public and you respond with total emotional withdrawal, they will never forget it. If someone repeatedly devalues your time and you quietly stop inviting them into it, that imprint lingers long after the moment passes. This doesn't mean theatrics, yelling, or childish retaliation. It means carefully selecting consequences that burn themselves into memory. You're teaching them without words that disrespect costs more than they thought. Imagine this: someone cracks a funny remark about you in front of a group. Instead of laughing along or snapping back, you fix them with a level stare and say in a low, even tone, "That wasn't amusing." Then you move on as if they don't exist. Or you simply stand up and excuse yourself, offering no explanation at all. Suddenly, the energy in the room shifts. They expected a reaction. They got ice. Another example: a friend continually arrives late to plans, signaling your time isn't valuable. You don't nag them or make jokes about it. You simply stop making plans with them. When they ask why, you tell them, "I assumed you had other priorities." No anger, no resentment, just a surgical consequence. The discomfort they feel will outlast the original disrespect by days or weeks. Machiavelli famously wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." The point is not cruelty, it's memorability. When they think of crossing you in the future, they instantly recall the cost from last time. This tactic works because it breaks the script. Most people expect either compliance or emotional outbursts. Compliance invites more abuse. Emotional outbursts undermine your authority. But a cold, measured, slightly disproportionate response is rare, and rare things get remembered. Imagine someone talking over you repeatedly in a group. Instead of fighting for airtime, you become silent whenever they're present. You're polite but distant. They quickly sense they've lost your engagement, which was the true privilege all along. Or imagine a relative who criticizes your choices constantly. Instead of debating, you reduce contact. No grand announcement, just polite unavailability. The message lands without theatrics. The punishment speaks louder than the offense. What you're doing here is training the people around you to associate disrespect with consequences, not random consequences, not occasional consequences, predictable, memorable ones. People who respect you will thrive under this system because it's fair. People who only benefited from your lack of boundaries will start to fade away. Affirm this to yourself. My responses send a clear message. Think of the last time you let a slight slide. What could a stronger, colder consequence have been? Start practicing now. But there's another level beyond even disproportionate responses. Your behavior matters, but your aura matters more. The way you're perceived before you open your mouth frames every interaction after it. You must build the quiet image of someone who should never be tested, not through loudness, not through open intimidation, but through deliberate self-presentation, controlled intensity, quiet self-possession, the suggestion without words that crossing you would be expensive. This dark image is formed through dozens of small, consistent signals. The way you walk into a room, straight-backed and unrushed. The way you speak, measured and deliberate instead of scattered or frantic. The way you handle conflict when eyes are on you. The way you respond to both flattery and criticism with the same calm neutrality. Every time someone watches you shut down disrespect with surgical precision, they file you under "Do Not Test." Over time, your reputation walks into the room before you do. Think about the people you know who radiate natural authority. They rarely explain their standards, their presence explains it for them. They don't warn about consequences. Everyone simply understands there will be consequences. They aren't aggressive or loud, but something in their composure signals that their energy is expensive and their attention is earned. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Appear to be untouchable, someone who chooses where to place their warmth, time, and attention with care. Someone whose respect must be earned, not assumed. How do you build this practically? Selectivity. Decide who gets your kindness, your time, your access, your second chances. This communicates that these things have value. When someone disrespects you publicly, your response should be swift, calm, and definite. No dramatics, no raised voice. Just consequence delivered like clockwork. People should feel a subtle tension before saying something disrespectful to you. Not because you're a bully, but because you're clearly someone who enforces standards. Never chase people for their attention. If they don't answer messages, you don't double text. If they cancel plans, you don't scramble to offer another date. Let them come to you. Never over-explain or justify your limits. State them once. Enforce them. People who argue with your boundaries are probing to see if they're negotiable. Never tolerate disrespect just to keep the peace. Every time you let something slide, you erode the image you're constructing. Every time you enforce a standard, you strengthen it. Maintain a steady emotional presence, not overly eager one day and withdrawn the next. That consistency makes you reliable but unmanipulable. The most powerful people in a room are often the quietest. Their silence signals they need to prove nothing. This is the energy you're cultivating. When you do this long enough, the benefits multiply. Difficult people avoid you because you're not an easy target. Quality people seek you out because self-respect attracts respect. Opportunities flow toward you because you're known as someone who handles business without chaos. Right now, affirm, "My presence commands respect." Finally, there's the high-level strategy, the place where you stop taking disrespect personally at all. Instead of feeling wounded, you start treating each act of disrespect as valuable intelligence. This reframes everything. Every slight becomes data about who people really are. Every insult reveals insecurity. Every boundary test exposes hidden motives. Now you're not just defending yourself, you're gathering information. Who mocks you after you succeed? That's envy talking. Who undermines you when no one else is looking? That's cowardice. Who acts polite in public but cruel in private? That's manipulation. Who grows angry when you enforce a boundary? That's someone who was feeding off your lack of boundaries. This is advanced level Machiavellian, thinking you're no longer reactive. You're a strategist reading the field. You respond with silence, distance, or consequence, but you also store the data for later. Over time, you build a precise map of who can be trusted and who can't. This final shift transforms how you live. You stop feeling shocked by people's behavior. You stop wondering, why would they do that? Because you already know you've been paying attention. Disrespect stops being a personal insult and becomes a useful signal. And when you combine this intelligence with your consistency, your memorable consequences, your crafted image, and your controlled presence, you become a person who commands respect without demanding it. People sense it. They feel it before you even speak. Right now, ask yourself, are you reacting like most people with compliance or explosions, or are you applying strategy? Are you enforcing standards or hoping kindness will teach people how to treat you? Are you gathering intelligence or just getting hurt? The answers will reveal exactly where you stand on the power spectrum. Affirm it one last time. I respond with strategy, not emotion. My standards are clear. My presence commands respect. Start practicing today. Small infractions, consistent consequences, memorable responses, controlled aura, strategic observation. In time, you won't just be defending respect. You'll be embodying it so fully that disrespect rarely dares to show its face. The moment you begin insisting on your worth and demanding proper treatment, notice carefully who becomes irritated or defensive. Those reactions reveal the individuals who benefited most from your previous lack of self-respect. Niccolo Machiavelli famously warned that you must keep allies near and adversaries even nearer. But before you can do that, you first have to recognize who your adversaries actually are. Many people spend years extending kindness and friendship to individuals who secretly envy or resent them, all because they never learned to decode the quiet signals of contempt that give someone's real feelings away. Once you sharpen your ability to read these signals, you gain an extraordinary advantage. It becomes easier to decide who should be trusted with your personal information, who deserves to be included in opportunities, and who must be watched from a safe distance because they're not truly on your side. Consider how this intelligence works in practical terms. Imagine a colleague who frequently cuts you off during meetings, yet never interrupts the department head. That behavior is a message. They perceive you as beneath them in status and are actively maintaining that hierarchy. Such a person is not a reliable partner for important projects because they've already demonstrated their willingness to undermine you. Picture a friend who constantly cracks jokes about your appearance but never directs that humor toward your more visibly successful acquaintances. That's not harmless teasing. It's a window into their insecurity and bitterness about your progress or your looks. This isn't the person you should be celebrating victories with because they cannot genuinely handle your success. Think of a relative who criticizes your choices, yet praises identical decisions made by someone else in the family. That reveals favoritism, bias, and possibly envy. It's not someone whose advice you can take at face value. Or consider someone who treats you respectfully only while you hold power or status, but becomes dismissive the moment your circumstances shift. That's evidence they respected your position, not you as a person, and such a person will vanish during your toughest moments. When you start interpreting these behaviors as signals instead of insults, you shift from feeling wounded to feeling informed. Instead of thinking, how dare they behave like this? You start thinking, thank you for revealing yourself before I invested more of myself. Disrespect becomes an early warning system, a filter that weeds out low-quality connections before you pour time, trust, or energy into them. It's like having a silent security alarm that detects hidden threats before they can do real harm. Most people ignore these alarms because they desperately want to believe in the goodness of everyone. They rationalize rude actions as misunderstandings, bad days, or personality quirks. This desire to see the best in others often becomes the very trap that allows them to be mistreated repeatedly. Those who are perceptive pay attention to patterns rather than isolated incidents. They notice when someone consistently treats them worse than they treat others. They see when someone's promises don't align with their actions. They use these discrepancies to guide their decisions about trust, collaboration, and disclosure. Machiavelli understood that human behavior is predictable once you know what to look for. The person who casually violates minor boundaries will, if given the chance, violate larger ones. The one who disrespects you in small ways today will almost certainly escalate tomorrow if they think it serves their interests. Treating disrespect as actionable intelligence gives you the power to forecast future conduct and shield yourself accordingly. You begin adjusting how much access and closeness you grant people based not on their charming words, but on their consistent behavior. The beauty of this approach is how emotionally freeing it is. When someone behaves rudely, you don't internalize it as a judgment of your value. You log it as data about their character. This keeps you calm, strategic, and collected. People reveal their truest selves in how they treat those they believe can't retaliate. Watch closely how someone interacts with service workers, subordinates, or family members who lack power. That's the unfiltered version of their nature. When you understand this, disrespect stops being a wound and becomes a useful report on who's safe to trust. Repeat this affirmation to yourself often. Disrespect reveals truth. Start keeping mental notes of who treats you one way and others another way. Those differences are clues to their real attitude toward you. There's also a psychological foundation for why disrespect appears in the first place. Most of it isn't actually about you, it's about the other person. People act disrespectfully for a handful of predictable reasons. Sometimes it's insecurity. They tear you down to build themselves up. Sometimes it's a dominance test. They're probing to see if you'll allow them to claim higher status. Sometimes it's fear. Your growth or success threatens their sense of adequacy, so they try to sabotage it before it overshadows them. And sometimes it's simply a habit they've developed because it has worked on certain types of people. They throw disrespect out like a fishing line to see who bites. What's fascinating is that most individuals who dish out disrespect are terrible at receiving it. They're comfortable only when they're the aggressor. The moment you respond differently than they expected, their entire strategy unravels. Disrespectful people usually count on one of two reactions: quiet compliance, which cements their dominance, or emotional outbursts, which make you look unsteady while they look calm. When you respond with composed silence, unwavering boundaries, and deliberate consequences, you flip the dynamic completely. They're no longer the cool, confident one. They start looking petty, vindictive, even ridiculous, while you appear grounded and untouchable. This is why the techniques you're learning are so effective. They work with human psychology rather than against it. They take the disrespectful person's own tendencies and turn them back on them. And because you understand the underlying psychology, you stay composed in moments that would previously have provoked you. You're not trying to convince them you're worthy of respect. You're simply making it clear, without drama, that poor treatment carries a cost they may not want to pay. People who habitually disrespect others are looking for easy prey. When you make yourself a difficult target, someone whose boundaries are firm and whose consequences are consistent, they usually move on to someone else. This isn't cruelty, it's reality. Being kind doesn't mean being a pushover. Being compassionate doesn't mean accepting disrespect. Truly good people can and must defend their dignity. The methods described here are not just for isolated incidents. They transform how people perceive and interact with you permanently. As you keep applying these principles, something almost magical begins to happen. Your reputation starts walking into the room before you do. People hear about you before they meet you, and what they hear is that you are someone who must be treated with respect. This reputation becomes self-reinforcing. When people expect to respect you, they typically do. When they've been told you don't tolerate poor treatment, they're far less likely to test you. When they know that crossing your boundaries carries real consequences, they pause before acting. This doesn't mean you become feared or disliked. In fact, most people admire those who respect themselves. They're drawn to people who project clear standards and a backbone. They prefer dealing with individuals whose boundaries are consistent because it creates a sense of safety and clarity. From their perspective, which is more comfortable, engaging with someone whose reactions are unpredictable, sometimes exploding over trivial matters, other times tolerating serious violations, or engaging with someone whose standards are clear, firm, and fair every time. Most people would rather choose the second. Your steadiness makes interactions less stressful, not more. Over time, the quality of your social circle improves. Those who thrived on your previous leniency drift away. Those who once hesitated to be close to you because they didn't respect how you let others treat you, now step forward. This shift compounds. You find yourself surrounded by higher quality people because they're the only ones who remain. Your professional life improves as colleagues and superiors recognize you as someone who commands respect. Your personal relationships strengthen because you no longer tolerate partners or friends who undervalue you. But this evolution requires patience and consistency. Old contacts will test your new boundaries, hoping you'll revert to your old patterns. You'll be tempted to let something slide, just this once, to avoid conflict. Resist that urge. Every time you uphold your standards, you're investing in your future self. Every boundary enforced is a deposit into the bank of your reputation. Every consequence followed through on is a brick in the fortress of respect you're building. The person who masters the art of responding to disrespect with composure, strategy, and control becomes someone who naturally commands respect. They don't have to beg for better treatment. They create the conditions that make it automatic. And that's the real power, not forcing people to treat you well, but structuring your life so that only those who will treat you well stay close enough to matter.